Listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you might save your life, or at least your sanity. If you've ever felt like nothing you do is good enough, if you've ever wondered why your best is never the best, if you've ever questioned whether you're losing your mind in your own family, this story is for you. Please, if this resonates with you, share it. Comment below if you've experienced this. Let others know they're not alone. Because for 19 years, I thought I was. My name is Monroe, and until 8 months ago, I lived in a prison without bars in Birmingham, Alabama. The walls were designer wallpaper, the chains were expectations, and my warden was the person who should have loved me most, my own mother. Dr. Victoria Ashford wasn't just any mother. She was Birmingham's most celebrated cosmetic surgeon, a woman who had built an empire on the promise of perfection. Her clinic, Ashford Aesthetic Excellence, occupied 3 floors of the most prestigious medical building in the city. She had transformed the faces and bodies of Alabama's elite, from senators' wives to country music stars. The irony wasn't lost on me that someone who made millions as an appearance transformer couldn't accept her own child's appearance. She imposed very high standards, expecting excellence in all areas of life, not for my well-being, but to maintain her image. I learned that anything less than perfect was unacceptable, internalizing this and carrying it into every moment, driven by fear of failure and a desire to meet impossible standards. The first memory I have of disappointing her was when I was 5. I'd drawn a picture of our family, stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. I was so proud, running to show her when she came home from the clinic. "Monroe," she said, holding the paper between her manicured fingertips like it was contaminated, "this is unacceptable. The proportions are wrong. The color choices are pedestrian. If you're going to create something worthy of the Ashford name." She enrolled me in art classes the next day. Not for fun, not for creativity, but for perfection. By age 7, my schedule looked like this. 5:30 a.m., wake up for appearance inspection. 6 a.m., breakfast, measured portions, specific nutrients. 7 a.m., school, private, of course. 3:30 p.m., Mandarin Chinese tutoring. 4:30 p.m., piano lessons. 5:30 p.m., ballet. 6:30 p.m., dinner, if I'd earned it through performance. 7:30 p.m., homework, checked, rechecked, and critiqued. 9 p.m., skincare routine, started at age 7 because prevention is key. 9:30 p.m., bed. Weekends were for violin, oil painting, equestrian lessons, and etiquette training. Every activity had to result in demonstrable excellence. Second place in anything was failure. A 98% on a test meant a 2-hour lecture about the missing 2%. "Mediocrity is a choice, Monroe," she would say, standing in my doorway each night. And Ashfords don't choose mediocrity. This led to perfectionism and a fear of failure. I felt unlovable and unworthy of attention unless I met impossible standards, constantly seeking approval from others. The appearance standards were the worst. Every morning, she would inspect me like I was one of her patients. She'd circle me slowly, noting imperfections in a leather-bound journal she kept specifically for this purpose. "Your posture is 3 degrees off optimal. That hairstyle adds width to your face. Your skin looks dull. Are you using the products I prescribed? Your nail beds are uneven. We'll book you a corrective manicure." I was 12 when she first suggested minor adjustments to my appearance. "Just a little refinement of the nose, darling. You'll thank me when you're older." I refused, and she didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. The silence was almost worse than the criticism. I was told I was never wanted in the first place, but as long as I was here, I would serve the senior narcissist, and if I didn't, I'd be punished. High school was where the transformation obsession intensified. She hired a personal stylist, a nutritionist, and a life coach who was really just another critic with a clipboard. My weight was monitored daily. My food was weighed. My clothes were selected based on optimal visual impact. I wasn't allowed to choose my own haircut, my own friends, or my own dreams. The friends I was permitted were carefully vetted, children of other prominent families who met her standards. But even those relationships were monitored and managed. She would debrief me after every social interaction. "What did Caroline's mother say about the fundraiser? Did you mention my clinic to Mrs. Henderson? You laughed too loudly at dinner. People will think you're unsophisticated." Our family was full of deceit and emotional abuse. These dynamics were extremely dysfunctional and harmful for every family member involved. When I was 15, I made the mistake of falling in love. His name was Marcus, and he was everything my mother despised: middle class, artistic, and genuinely kind. He saw me, not the carefully constructed facade. For 3 months, I felt what it was like to be accepted for who I was. Mother found out, of course. She always did. "This ends now," she said, holding printed screenshots of our text messages. "This boy is beneath you. He's beneath us. You will not throw away everything I built for you for some teenage infatuation with mediocrity." She transferred me to a different school the next week. I never saw Marcus again. Later, I learned she had threatened his family with legal action if he contacted me. College applications became the next battlefield. I wanted to study literature. She demanded pre-med. I wanted to go to a small liberal arts college. She insisted on Ivy League. Every essay I wrote was edited and re-edited until my own voice disappeared completely. "You're not just representing yourself," she said, red pen in hand, marking up my 5th draft. "You're representing the Ashford legacy. Every word must be perfect." Our home had unspoken rules of engagement. I had to submit to her authority, and taking her side was mandatory. Rage was normalized and denial was rampant. The acceptance letter to Harvard should have been a celebration. Instead, it was just another checkbox on her endless list of requirements. The next day, she had already moved on to planning my entire college trajectory: which classes, which professors, which internships would look best. But Harvard was where everything changed. For the first time in my life, I was 300 miles away from her daily inspections. I could eat breakfast without having it weighed. I could laugh without measuring the volume. I could make friends without background checks. It was also where I discovered the truth about myself that I'd been hiding even from my own consciousness. I wasn't the person she had tried to create. I met Dr. Patricia Reeves, my psychology professor, who introduced me to the concept of narcissistic family dynamics. I remember sitting in her office, tears streaming down my face as she explained what I had endured. "This isn't normal, Monroe," she said gently. "Parents are supposed to love you for who you are, not who they can force you to become." She recommended the Reddit community r/raisedbynarcissists, which helped me realize I wasn't alone in this experience. Reading the stories on that forum was like looking in a mirror. Thousands of people describing my exact life: the impossible standards, the constant criticism, the feeling of never being enough. For the first time, I had words for what I'd experienced: emotional abuse, narcissistic perfectionism, psychological manipulation. But knowing had a price. Once I saw the truth, I couldn't unsee it. Every phone call home became unbearable. Her voice, once just demanding, now sounded dangerous. Her concern revealed itself as control. Her love exposed as possession. "You sound different," she said during one call. "Are you gaining weight? Your voice sounds heavier." "I'm fine, Mother." Fine is not excellent, Monroe. Fine is what mediocre people settle for. "When are you coming home? We need to review your appearance." Standards slip when they're not maintained. I started limiting contact. First, daily calls became weekly. Then weekly became monthly. Each reduction was met with escalation: more texts, more emails, more threats disguised as concern. "I've invested too much in you for you to throw it all away," she texted one night. "You owe me excellence." The summer before my senior year at Harvard, I made a discovery that changed everything. I had returned to Birmingham for a brief visit. Mother had threatened to cut off my tuition if I didn't attend her clinic's 15th anniversary celebration. While she was at the event, I was sent home to rest and prepare my appearance for the evening gala. Alone in the house for the first time in years, I found myself in her home office. I wasn't snooping, not initially. I was looking for aspirin for the migraine that always accompanied her proximity. But her desk drawer was locked, unusual for someone who believed she had complete control. My childhood hadn't been entirely wasted. Among the many skills she'd forced me to perfect was lock-picking, though she'd called it understanding mechanisms and insisted it was for developing fine motor skills. The lock clicked open in seconds. Inside were documents that made my blood run cold, then hot with rage. Bank statements. Investment portfolios. Trust documents. All in my name, established by my late grandmother, Mother's mother, who had died when I was 3. Grandmother Eleanor had left me everything: $3.4 million in investments, properties in 3 states, and a letter. The letter was dated just weeks before her death. My darling Monroe. By the time you read this, you'll be old enough to understand what I've observed in your mother. She is my daughter, and I love her, but I fear she loves perfection more than people. I've watched her with you, and my heart breaks. This inheritance is your freedom. I've structured it to become accessible on your 25th birthday, or upon your graduation from university, whichever comes first. Your mother has been named trustee, but she cannot access the principal without your consent after you come of age. Use this gift to become who you truly are, not who she demands you to be. Live freely. Grandmother Eleanor. My hands shook as I photographed every document. The trust was real. The money was real. And in 6 months, when I graduated, it would be mine. Mother had hidden this from me for 19 years, all while demanding I be grateful for every penny she spent on my development. But there was more. Credit card statements in my name that I'd never seen. Loans taken against my future inheritance. She had been using my identity, my credit, my future wealth to fund her lifestyle expansion. The clinic's new wing? Funded by loans in my name. Her collection of luxury cars? Purchased with my credit. This was my chance for a complete transformation, a comprehensive change from head to toe. A new appearance that would complement my true personality, breathing new life into who I really was. I spent the rest of that summer planning. Not the desperate, frantic planning of escape, but the careful, methodical planning of justice. I consulted lawyers confidentially. I documented everything, every forged signature, every fraudulent transaction, every illegal use of my identity. I also began my own transformation, but not the kind Mother would have ever approved. I started therapy with Dr. James Harrison, a specialist in narcissistic abuse recovery. He helped me understand that therapy focused on reducing entitlement, fostering empathy, and addressing perfectionistic thinking patterns could help, though change would be a long and challenging process. Your mother's perfectionism isn't about you, he explained. It's about her own deep insecurity. Narcissistic personality disorder involves an exaggerated sense of self-importance, entitlement, lack of empathy, and becoming defensive when challenged. You were just the canvas she used to paint her ideal image. I also discovered my true self. The person I was when no one was watching, when no one was measuring, when no one was demanding excellence. I was creative, but not in the rigid way she'd taught. I loved writing, messy, emotional, imperfect writing that would have horrified her. I was naturally curvy, not the skeletal figure she'd tried to starve me into. I was loud when I laughed, quiet when I thought, and comfortable in thrift store finds rather than designer labels. I cut my hair short, something she'd forbidden since I was 10. Long hair is feminine power, she'd always said. But my short, choppy pixie cut felt like freedom. I got a tattoo on my ribcage, a small butterfly emerging from a cocoon, where she'd never see it. I ate pizza at 2 a.m. with friends. I failed a quiz and didn't die. I wore sneakers with dresses. I was imperfect, and it was glorious. My transformation was life-changing. Like the viral hair transformations I'd seen online, from carefully controlled to freely creative, I was finally becoming myself. Stylists deserve gold medals for helping people find their authentic selves, and I'd found mine. The external reinvention was more than just appearance, it was freedom. Every choice I made for myself, every decision that wasn't about meeting her standards, was a small revolution. I joined a creative writing group. I volunteered at a literacy center. I dated someone she would have despised, a social worker named Amy who saw beauty in imperfection. But I kept all of this hidden. On my carefully scheduled calls home, I played the part. I spoke about grades and achievements. I sent her photos from angles she'd taught me, in clothes I kept specifically for her approval. I was becoming an expert at her own game, presenting a perfect facade while living an authentic life. "You sound tired," she said during one call. "Are you maintaining your skincare routine? You can't afford to slack off, Monroe. Your genetics require constant vigilance." "Yes, Mother. Everything is perfect." "Perfect isn't a state, it's a practice. Remember that." "Oh, I would remember. I would remember everything." December 15, 2024. The Birmingham Country Club's annual Winter Gala. The event where Alabama's elite gathered to celebrate their success and scrutinize each other's failures. Mother had been planning my appearance at this event for months. It would be my first major social appearance since starting Harvard, and she intended to showcase her creation. She had chosen my dress, a $15,000 Oscar de la Renta in cream silk, my shoes, Louboutin, of course, my hairstyle, an elaborate updo that took 3 hours, and even my conversation topics, the clinic's expansion, my Harvard achievements, my gratitude for her guidance. "This is your debut," she said, adjusting my posture for the 100th time. "Everyone who matters will be there. You will be perfect, or you will be nothing." The ballroom was exactly as I'd remembered from childhood: crystal chandeliers, gold accents, and 113 of Birmingham's most influential people, all wearing judgment-like jewelry. I stood beside Mother as she worked the room, introducing me like I was another procedure she'd perfected. "You remember Monroe, don't you? Harvard senior, summa cum laude track, following in my footsteps." The lies flowed like champagne. I wasn't summa cum laude. I wasn't following in her footsteps. But I smiled and nodded, playing the part one last time. Then Richard Thornton arrived. Richard was new money tech, the kind of billionaire Mother desperately wanted to attract to her clinic. She practically dragged me to him, her fingers digging into my arm hard enough to leave marks. "Richard. You must meet my daughter, Monroe. She's everything a young woman should be: accomplished, refined, perfect." Richard was in his 50s, with the kind of predatory smile that made my skin crawl. Mother didn't notice, or didn't care. "Victoria, she's exquisite," he said, looking at me like I was a purchase to be made. "You've done an excellent job. Like one of your procedures, flawless results." "Oh, Monroe is all natural," Mother laughed, the lie so smooth it sounded like truth. "Though I've certainly refined the raw material. She's been my greatest project." Project. Not daughter. Project. "I'm actually considering expanding into youth aesthetics," Richard continued, his hand finding my waist. "Perhaps Monroe could give me some insights over dinner." "Tomorrow night?" "She would be honored," Mother answered for me, her eyes gleaming with opportunity. "Monroe loves discussing the business." That's when something in me snapped. 19 years of being sold, controlled, perfected, it all crystallized in that moment. Like many children of narcissistic parents, I had chronically blamed myself, nurturing hope by sacrificing my self-esteem, telling myself if I fix myself, I'll finally be loved. But standing there, being literally traded for business connections, I finally understood: her love was conditional, transactional, and I would never be enough. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through their negotiation, "I won't be available tomorrow." The room seemed to freeze. Mother's face went from composed to volcanic in seconds. "Monroe is confused," she said, her laugh sharp as surgical instruments. "The stress of finals." "I'm not confused," I interrupted, louder now. Several heads turned. "I'm not available for dinner tomorrow, or any other night, because I'm not a business opportunity for you to leverage." "Monroe." Her voice was warning thunder. "We should discuss this privately." "Like we discussed Harvard? Like we discussed my trust fund? Like we discussed the $2.3 million in loans you took out in my name?" The silence was absolute. 113 pairs of eyes locked on us. Someone dropped a champagne glass, the shatter echoing like applause. "You're confused," she hissed, her composure cracking. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I pulled out my phone, showing the photographed documents on the screen. "I understand that grandmother Eleanor left me $3.4 million that you've been hiding. I understand that you've been using my identity to fund your empire. I understand that everything you've done has been about you, never about me." The room erupted in whispers. Phones appeared, recording. The Birmingham elite loved nothing more than watching one of their own fall. Like those viral TikTok videos with millions of views exposing narcissistic parents, this was my moment of truth. "Everything I did was for you," she screamed, abandoning all pretense of composure. "Every sacrifice, every penny spent, every opportunity created. Every criticism, every impossible standard, every piece of myself I had to kill to meet your expectations." I shot back. "You didn't raise a daughter, you manufactured a trophy. But I'm done being polished for your display case." Security was moving toward us, but the crowd was enthralled. Birmingham's most controlled woman was unraveling before their eyes. "You are nothing without me," she shrieked. "I created you. You owe me everything." "I owe you nothing," I said, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face. And after tonight, you'll owe me $2.3 million plus damages. I turned to the crowd, many still recording. Dr. Victoria Ashford, the woman who promises perfection, is a fraud who stole millions from her own daughter. Every one of you who's trusted her with your faces should be asking what else she's lied about. Then I walked out, my heels clicking against marble, 113 witnesses to my liberation. The aftermath of the country club confrontation was immediate and explosive. Within hours, videos were circulating on social media with hashtags like #BirminghamScandal and #PerfectMotherExposed. Local news picked it up by morning. By noon, it was trending nationally. But I wasn't done. The public humiliation was just the appetizer. The main course would be served cold, with a side of legal justice. I had assembled my team months before the gala. Sarah Chan, a Harvard Law graduate who specialized in financial fraud and identity theft. Marcus Williams, yes, the same Marcus from high school, now a successful forensic accountant. Dr. Patricia Reeves, who agreed to serve as an expert witness on psychological abuse and narcissistic family dynamics. We met in Sarah's Birmingham office the day after the gala. The identity theft charges alone could result in 10 to 15 years, Sarah explained, spreading documents across her conference table. But with the fraud, forgery, and emotional abuse claims, we're looking at a comprehensive case that could revolutionize how Alabama handles familial financial abuse. Attorneys across the United States recognize emotional abuse as a cause of action, and it must be proved that the victim endured emotional abuse by its legal definition. Marcus had done extensive forensic analysis. She's been siphoning from your trust since you were 7. Small amounts at first, administrative fees she paid to herself as trustee. But over the years, it escalated. The loans were just the latest phase. What about the clinic? I asked. Marcus smiled grimly. That's where it gets interesting. She's been using your inheritance as collateral for business loans without your knowledge. The entire East Wing expansion? Built on your credit. But here's the kicker, she's been reporting inflated revenues to investors while hiding debts. That's securities fraud. We spent weeks building the case. I provided 47 recorded conversations where she admitted to using my money for your own good. 234 emails showing her manipulation and control tactics. Bank statements showing unauthorized transactions. Photos of forged signatures on loan documents. Testimony from 12 former employees who witnessed her discussing using my inheritance. But the emotional abuse component needed different evidence. I provided testimony about how the abuse affected me emotionally, witness statements from people who saw the changes in my behavior, medical records from therapy sessions, and documentation showing changes in my daily life. Dr. Reeves was particularly valuable. In my professional opinion, she wrote in her statement, Monroe exhibits classic symptoms of complex PTSD resulting from sustained narcissistic abuse. The perfectionism, anxiety, and identity confusion are textbook responses to this type of psychological manipulation. We also tracked down other victims. 3 former employees who'd been fired for not meeting her impossible standards were eager to testify. 2 ex-boyfriends of mine whom she'd threatened came forward. Even my high school art teacher, Mrs. Patterson, agreed to testify about the extreme pressure she'd witnessed. The most damaging evidence came from an unexpected source, her own social media. Mother had been posting on a private Instagram account, accessible only to her inner circle of other wealthy mothers. The posts were a goldmine of admission. Parenting is about molding clay into art. Monroe was particularly stubborn clay, but look at the masterpiece I've created. Investment in your children should yield returns. I've invested hundreds of thousands in Monroe's development. She owes me her success. Genetic potential means nothing without proper management. I've managed Monroe's potential since birth. Sarah had tears in her eyes reading them. She literally admits to viewing you as an investment property, not a person. We also discovered she'd been doing this to others. 3 other young women had come to her clinic for procedures and ended up in financial arrangements that bordered on exploitation. One, Jennifer Morrison, had been convinced to sign over her inheritance for lifetime beauty maintenance. She preys on insecurity, Jennifer told me when we met. She finds what you hate about yourself and weaponizes it. Then she presents herself as the only solution. The criminal case was filed on January 3, 2025. The civil suit followed on January 5. We weren't just seeking the $2.3 million she'd stolen, We were seeking punitive damages for 19 years of emotional abuse, identity theft, and fraud. But legal revenge wasn't enough. I wanted the world to see who she really was. I started a blog, The Perfect Illusion, a survivor story. Every day, I posted a memory, a piece of evidence, a truth about growing up under narcissistic perfectionism. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of comments from others who'd experienced similar abuse. Messages from former patients who'd felt something was off about her. Support from therapists and advocates worldwide. Like the viral narc talk videos that rack up millions of views educating people about narcissistic behavior, my story was resonating with those who had experienced similar toxic family dynamics and were recognizing unhealthy patterns for the first time. The blog went viral. Hashtag The Perfect Illusion started trending. Major media outlets requested interviews. But I was selective. This wasn't about fame, it was about justice and helping others recognize abuse. Mother tried to fight back. She hired the most expensive PR firm in the South, attempting to spin the narrative. She claimed I was mentally ill, that I'd been corrupted at Harvard, that this was all a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by a troubled young woman. But the evidence was overwhelming. And more kept surfacing. Her own sister, my Aunt Patricia, finally broke her silence. Victoria has been like this since childhood, she told reporters. Everything had to be perfect. She once locked me in a closet for 6 hours because I'd wrinkled her pageant dress. Mother, your grandmother Eleanor, saw it too. That's why she left the money to Monroe directly. She knew. The investigation expanded. The FBI got involved when the securities fraud allegations surfaced. The state medical board began reviewing her license. The IRS started auditing years of returns. By February, she was hemorrhaging support. Her society friends distanced themselves. Her clinic's investors pulled out. Her staff quit en masse. But the moment I knew we'd won came during a deposition. She was required to answer questions under oath, and Sarah was brilliant. Dr. Ashford, do you believe parents own their children? I believe parents have a responsibility to shape their children into the best versions of themselves. That wasn't my question. Do you believe you own Monroe? I created her. Everything she is. So yes, you believe you own her? She owes me. Dr. Ashford, is Monroe a person or a product? The silence stretched for 17 seconds. I counted. I don't understand the question. It's simple. Is your daughter a human being with autonomous rights, or is she a product you created? Mother's lawyer tried to object, but the damage was done. She couldn't answer because, in her mind, I had never been a person. I had always been a project. March 15, 2025. The criminal trial began on a gray Tuesday morning at the Jefferson County Courthouse in downtown Birmingham. The media circus was intense, news vans from CNN, Fox, NBC, and local stations lined the street. The headline "Perfectionist Surgeon Mom Stole Millions from Daughter" had captured national attention. The Jefferson County Court, which exercises jurisdiction in matters involving families and children, was the perfect venue for justice. Mother arrived in a black Bentley, wearing Chanel and her court face, a mask of wounded dignity. She'd lost weight, her legendary perfect appearance showing cracks. Her lawyer, Jonathan Blackwood, was Alabama's most expensive criminal defense attorney, known for getting wealthy clients reduced sentences. But I had truth on my side. And truth, properly documented and presented, is devastating. The prosecution opened with financial evidence. Charts showing money moving from my trust to her accounts. Forged signatures blown up on massive screens. A timeline of theft spanning 19 years. Then came my testimony. Miss Ashford, the prosecutor began gently, can you tell the court about your relationship with your mother? For 3 hours, I spoke. About the morning inspections. The weight charts. The punishment for imperfection. The isolation from anyone who might have helped. The theft not just of money, but of identity, childhood, and self-worth. She would tell me that I was an investment, I said, looking directly at her for the first time in months. That every dollar spent on my education, my appearance, my training, was a debt I'd have to repay. But the money she was spending was already mine. She was stealing from me while making me feel grateful for the theft. Mother's attorney tried to paint me as ungrateful, disturbed, influenced by radical ideologies at Harvard. But every claim was met with evidence. When he suggested I was exaggerating the emotional abuse, we played recordings. When he claimed the money transfers were legal trustee actions, we showed the forged authorizations. The most damaging testimony came from Dr. Helena Morrison, a former partner in Mother's clinic who'd quit 5 years earlier. Victoria was obsessed with Monroe, she testified. She would spend hours discussing how to optimize her daughter. She once told me that Monroe was her greatest experiment in human perfectibility. She kept charts and graphs of Monroe's measurements, achievements, even her menstrual cycles. It was disturbing. Did she ever express love for her daughter? The prosecutor asked. She expressed pride when Monroe achieved something that reflected well on her. But love? Genuine, unconditional love? Never. Monroe was a brand extension, not a daughter. Mother's defense was essentially that everything she did was legal as trustee and that any emotional challenges were just strict parenting. But then the prosecution introduced the Instagram posts, the emails to other parents bragging about her creation, the recorded phone calls where she explicitly discussed using my inheritance for her business. The turning point came when Jennifer Morrison testified about Mother's pattern of exploitation. Then another young woman, Casey Williams. Then another, Maria Santos. All had similar stories, young women with insecurities and inheritances who'd been manipulated into financial arrangements that enriched Mother. This isn't about one daughter and one mother, the prosecutor said in closing. This is about a pattern of predatory behavior, using the guise of medical authority and maternal concern to exploit vulnerable young women. Dr. Ashford didn't just steal from Monroe, she stole Monroe's entire sense of self, then charged her for the privilege. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Identity theft, guilty. Wire fraud, guilty. Forgery, guilty. Financial exploitation, guilty. Securities fraud, guilty. The courtroom erupted. Mother's perfect mask finally shattered completely. She screamed that I was destroying her, that I owed her everything, that I was nothing without her. You're nothing with her, someone in the gallery shouted back. Later, I learned it was Marcus's mother, who'd watched what Mother had done to separate us in high school. But the criminal trial was just part one. The civil trial was where the real reckoning would come. The civil case included not just financial restitution but damages for emotional abuse. We pursued punitive damages, which could be assigned to discourage continued negligent or abusive behavior. The Bureau of Justice Statistics recognizes such damages in emotional abuse cases. We had expanded our evidence to include expert testimony from 5 psychologists on narcissistic abuse, brain scans showing the physical impact of chronic stress from childhood, documentation of therapy costs I would need for years, lost opportunity costs from the education and career path she forced versus what I would have chosen, evidence of her continued attempts to control me even during the trial. The civil trial lasted 3 weeks. Every day, more truth emerged. Mother's attempts to bribe witnesses. Her hidden offshore accounts. Her manipulation of other family members to testify for her. The most powerful moment came when I presented my victim impact statement. Your Honor, for 19 years, I lived in a prison built from expectations. Every morning, I woke up knowing I would fail somehow, my hair would be wrong, my posture imperfect, my achievements insufficient. I was not allowed to be human. I was required to be a monument to her ego. The money she stole can be returned. The fraud can be punished. But the years of believing I was never enough, the decades I'll spend in therapy trying to find out who I really am underneath her programming, that's the real theft. I don't want revenge. I want recognition. Recognition that what happened to me was wrong. That children are not products to be perfected. That love should not have a price tag or performance metrics. And I want freedom. Freedom to fail, to be imperfect, to be human. Freedom to discover who Monroe really is when she's not being sculpted into someone else's masterpiece. The civil jury awarded $2.3 million in restitution, plus $5 million in punitive damages. Additionally, Mother was ordered to pay all legal fees and undergo mandatory psychological evaluation. But the true execution of revenge came from an unexpected source, the medical board. The Alabama Board of Medical Examiners had been investigating Mother's practice. What they found was damning. Falsified credentials for some procedures. Unlicensed staff performing treatments. Most importantly, psychological manipulation of patients that violated basic medical ethics. Her medical license was revoked permanently. The clinic was forced to close. The building, the temple to perfection she'd built with my stolen money, was seized to pay creditors. The social execution was complete when the Birmingham Country Club revoked her membership. The society pages that had once featured her now ran exposés on her fall. The women who'd admired her now whispered about her in the same salons where they'd once sought her approval. Like so many survivors sharing their stories on social media, I wasn't alone. The confusion, anxiety, hypervigilance, people-pleasing, and low self-worth all made sense. The complete destruction of Dr. Victoria Ashford happened in stages, like watching a skyscraper implode in slow motion, controlled, deliberate, and absolutely thorough. First came the financial collapse. The guilty verdicts triggered a cascade of consequences. Her business loans were called in immediately. The properties she'd purchased with my stolen identity were seized. The IRS, having discovered years of tax fraud, froze all her accounts. Within 2 weeks of the verdict, her net worth went from $12 million to negative $3 million. She tried to hide assets, transferring money to offshore accounts she thought were secret. But Marcus, my forensic accountant, had anticipated this. Every transfer was tracked, reported, and reversed. The attempted asset hiding added additional charges, obstruction of justice and contempt of court. Her exclusive penthouse in Birmingham's most prestigious building? Foreclosed. The collection of luxury cars? Repossessed. The vacation home in Aspen? Seized by federal marshals. Even her jewelry, the precious stones she'd worn like armor, was catalogued and auctioned to pay restitution. But financial ruin was just the beginning. The medical community's response was swift and merciless. Every professional organization she belonged to expelled her. The American Society of Plastic Surgeons issued a rare public censure. Medical journals retracted articles she'd published when it was discovered she'd fabricated data. Her much-vaunted Ashford technique was revealed to be plagiarized from a Korean surgeon's work. Former patients began coming forward with their own horror stories. Not just financial exploitation, but medical negligence. Procedures performed incorrectly. Complications ignored. Psychological manipulation disguised as postoperative care. 17 malpractice lawsuits were filed within a month. The social media explosion was beyond anything I could have imagined. #PerfectMotherExposed had over 500 million views across all platforms. TikTok creators made videos analyzing her manipulation tactics. Reddit threads dissected every aspect of the case. A prominent YouTuber created a 3-part documentary series that got 15 million views in the first week. Even the moderators from r/raisedbynarcissists, like Sea Turtles Can Fly, weighed in on how to handle dramatic situations where Liv seemed in danger, noting they often consulted mental health professionals and contacted admins when necessary. But the most devastating fallout for Mother was the complete abandonment by everyone she'd tried to impress. Her sister Patricia gave a tell-all interview to Vanity Fair, detailing decades of narcissistic abuse within the family. Victoria destroyed everything she touched, Patricia said. She couldn't just succeed, everyone else had to fail. She couldn't just be beautiful, everyone else had to be ugly. She couldn't just be a mother, she had to be a creator of perfection. Her country club friends, the ones who'd attended her elaborate parties and praised her achievements, disappeared overnight. Margaret Henderson, the social queen of Birmingham whom Mother had desperately tried to impress, was quoted in the society pages, "We always knew something was off about Victoria. The way she displayed that poor girl like a show dog. But in our circle, you don't interfere with how someone raises their children. Perhaps we should have." Even Richard Thornton, the billionaire she'd tried to sell me to at the gala, publicly distanced himself. "I was horrified to learn about Dr. Ashford's actions," he said in a statement. "I have daughters myself, and the thought of treating them as commodities is abhorrent." The employees from her clinic spoke out too. Her former head nurse, Diane Roberts, revealed the toxic environment. She demanded perfection from everyone. Nurses were fired for having a hair out of place. She once made a receptionist go home and change because her nail polish was too pedestrian. We were all terrified of her. Her attempts at damage control only made things worse. She hired a PR firm to rehabilitate her image, but they dropped her within a week when she insisted on a strategy that involved blaming me for being difficult to perfect. She tried to give an interview to a sympathetic journalist, but ended up screaming that everyone was jealous of her success. The interview went viral as an example of narcissistic collapse. Mother was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, with possibility of parole after 5. But before she reported to serve her sentence, there was one final confrontation. She demanded to see me. Through her lawyer, she claimed she had something important to tell me about my grandmother's death. It was manipulation, I knew, but I needed closure. We met in a supervised room at the courthouse. She looked diminished, no designer clothes, no perfect makeup, just a woman facing the ruins of her empire. "You destroyed me," she said without preamble. "No, Mother. You destroyed yourself. I just showed everyone what you were doing. Everything I did was to make you special. Everything you did was to make yourself special through me." She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something I'd never seen before, genuine confusion. She truly didn't understand what she'd done wrong. "I gave you everything," she whispered. "You gave me trauma. You gave me self-doubt. You gave me 19 years of believing I was never enough. The money you spent was mine. The life you planned was yours. You gave me nothing but pain wrapped in silk. You'll be nothing without me," she said, falling back on her old threat. "I already am something without you," I replied. "I'm free." She laughed, bitter and broken. "Free? You'll spend your whole life in therapy because of me. Every relationship you have will be poisoned by what I taught you. You'll never be able to accept love because you'll always be waiting for the conditions. I'm in your head forever, Monroe. Even in prison, I own you." For a moment, her words hit their mark. She was right about the therapy, about the challenges in relationships, about the voice in my head that still demanded perfection. But then I remembered something Dr. Harrison had told me. "She planted the seeds of doubt, but you choose whether to water them or let them die. You're in my past, Mother. Not my future. And yes, I'll need therapy. Yes, I'll struggle. But every day I'll choose to be human over being perfect. Every day I'll choose kindness over criticism. Every day I'll choose to be everything you never let me be. And that's not ownership, that's freedom." I stood to leave, but turned back at the door. "Oh, and Mother? Your technique was plagiarized, your results were average at best, and your nose job was obviously botched. I just thought after 19 years of criticism, you deserved some honest feedback." The last image I have of her is her face crumbling as the truth of her own imperfection was spoken aloud. 8 months have passed since Mother reported to federal prison. 8 months of therapy, growth, and discovering who Monroe really is when she's not being sculpted into someone else's masterpiece. I used part of the settlement to buy a small apartment in Cambridge, close enough to Harvard to finish my degree, in literature, not medicine. It's nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom with exposed brick and large windows that let in imperfect, beautiful light. The walls are covered with my own art, messy, emotional, real. The kind Mother would have thrown away. But the real transformation hasn't been in my living space, it's been in my living. I wake up now without inspection. My first thought isn't about what's wrong with me but what's possible for me. Some mornings I stay in bed until noon. Some mornings I run along the Charles River at sunrise. Both are perfectly acceptable because they're my choice. I've learned to eat without measuring. Pizza with friends, salad when I want it, birthday cake on random Tuesdays. My body has found its natural shape, softer than Mother demanded, stronger than she allowed. I've gained 15 pounds and lost a lifetime of shame. The therapy is ongoing and intense. Twice a week with Dr. Harrison, plus a support group for survivors of narcissistic abuse. We work on reconnecting with my own values and desires through mindfulness practices. Existential therapy and perfectionism counseling help me find meaning beyond achievements, redefining success on my own terms, embracing a more balanced and fulfilling life rooted in authenticity, not perfection. Recovery isn't linear, Dr. Harrison reminds me when I have bad days. You're unlearning 19 years of programming. Be patient with yourself, something your mother never taught you. The support group has been life-changing. There are 7 of us, all survivors of different types of narcissistic abuse. When I told my story for the first time, expecting judgment or disbelief, I was met with understanding and tears of recognition. The morning inspections, Sarah, another member, said quietly. My father did the same thing. Except he focused on intelligence. Every day a quiz, every meal a lecture, every conversation a test I could fail. We've become each other's chosen family, the one that accepts imperfection as humanity rather than failure. I've also been writing, really writing, not the polished, perfect prose mother demanded. Raw, honest stories about survival and recovery. A literary agent reached out after reading my blog. She wants to help me turn it into a book. Your story could help thousands of people trapped in similar situations, she said. The book will be called The Perfect Illusion: Breaking Free from Narcissistic Perfectionism. Every chapter starts with one of Mother's rules and shows how breaking it led to freedom. The dedication will read, to everyone who was told they were never enough, you already are. But perhaps the most healing part of my new life has been helping others. I volunteer at a domestic violence shelter, working with teenagers who've escaped abusive homes. When they ask how it gets better, I tell them the truth, slowly, then suddenly. One day you'll wake up and realize the voice in your head criticizing you sounds like them, not you. And that's when you can start changing it. I've also started a scholarship fund with part of my inheritance, the Eleanor Freeman Foundation, named after my grandmother. It provides full college funding for young people escaping narcissistic family abuse. The first recipient was Jennifer, a 17-year-old whose mother had been forcing her into beauty pageants since age 3. She's now studying engineering at MIT, building robots instead of maintaining impossible beauty standards. My relationship with Amy has deepened into something I didn't think I was capable of: healthy love. She's patient when I panic over small mistakes, gentle when I fall into perfectionist spirals, and endlessly supportive of my messy, imperfect journey to wellness. You apologize for everything, she noted one evening as I said sorry for the third time for leaving a dish in the sink. What would happen if you just didn't? I don't know. Let's find out. Learning to accept love without conditions, criticism, or performance metrics has been like learning a new language. But Amy makes it easier by loving the parts of me Mother tried to destroy: my loud laugh, my emotional writing, my imperfect body, my chaotic creativity. We're planning to move in together next month. The thought terrifies and excites me in equal measure. The legal victories have created precedent. 3 other cases of parental financial abuse have successfully used our case as reference. The Ashford Standard is now legal shorthand for extreme parental exploitation. It's a bitter legacy for someone who demanded perfection, to become the standard for what not to do. I've been invited to speak at conferences about narcissistic abuse. At first, I declined. Public speaking was one of Mother's forced accomplishments, and I couldn't separate it from performance anxiety. But then I realized, she made me speak her words. Now I speak my own. My first speech was at the National Conference on Family Trauma in Boston. I was terrified, certain I'd fail without her rehearsals and critiques. But as I looked out at the audience, hundreds of therapists, survivors, and advocates, I realized they didn't want perfection. They wanted truth. For 19 years, I began, voice shaking, I was told that love was conditional on performance, that worth was measured in achievements, that being human was failure. I'm here to tell you that's a lie. Love doesn't require perfection. Worth isn't earned through accomplishments. And being human, messy, flawed, real, is the greatest success of all. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. But more importantly, afterward, dozens of people approached me with their own stories. Each one a validation that speaking imperfectly but honestly was more powerful than any polished performance Mother had ever demanded. Marcus and I reconnected as friends. He's married now, with twins, living the kind of normal, happy life Mother would have deemed mediocre. We have coffee once a month, and he always laughs when I automatically fix my posture as I sit down. Old habits? He asks gently. Old ghosts, I reply. But they're getting quieter. He was there the day I did something I never thought I'd do. I visited Mother in prison. Not for her. For me. She looked older, smaller, wearing orange instead of Oscar de la Renta. When she saw me, something flickered in her eyes. Hope? Anger? I couldn't tell. I forgive you, I said without preamble. She straightened, perhaps thinking she'd won something. Not for you, I continued. For me. I forgive you so I can let go of the anger that keeps me connected to you. I forgive you so your voice in my head loses its power. I forgive you so I can fully become who I was always meant to be, someone you never met because you were too busy trying to create someone who never existed. Monroe, she started. My name is Mo now, I interrupted. Monroe was your creation. Mo is mine. I left without looking back. The drive home from the prison was the first time in my life I felt truly free. Not just legally or financially, but emotionally untethered from her expectations, her demands, her version of who I should be. That night, I did something radical. I failed on purpose. I was supposed to submit a paper for my literature class, one I'd been perfecting for weeks. Instead, I turned in a rough draft with a note to my professor: "I'm learning that done is better than perfect. This isn't perfect, but it's mine." She gave me a B+ and a comment: "Your imperfection has more truth than most students' perfection. Keep going." Today marks exactly 1 year since the country club gala where everything changed. I'm sitting in my favorite coffee shop in Cambridge, writing on a laptop covered in stickers, something Mother would have called juvenile vandalism of property. My hair is 3 different colors because I couldn't decide on just one. I'm wearing sweatpants in public at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I have a visible tattoo, a minor coffee stain on my shirt, and laugh lines that no amount of Botox will ever touch. I am imperfect, and I am free. The book comes out next month. Pre-orders have already exceeded expectations, but more importantly, I've received hundreds of messages from people saying the excerpts helped them recognize their own abuse. One girl, barely 18, wrote, "Your story gave me the courage to refuse the nose job my mom scheduled for my graduation gift. Thank you for showing me I'm already enough." I've learned that healing isn't a destination, it's a daily practice. Some days I still hear Mother's voice criticizing my choices. Some nights I dream about morning inspections. Sometimes I catch myself arranging everything perfectly before remembering chaos is okay. But every day gets a little easier. Every choice I make for myself rather than for approval adds another brick to the foundation of my authentic life. Every imperfection I embrace is a small revolution against 19 years of programming. Amy and I are getting married next spring. When she proposed, yes, she proposed, another thing Mother would have deemed improper, she said something that still makes me cry. "I love you not despite your imperfections but because of them. They're proof that you survived. They're evidence of your humanity. They're the cracks where your light gets out." The wedding will be small, chaotic, and perfectly imperfect. We're serving pizza. My dress is from a thrift store. My hair will probably be a color that doesn't exist in nature. And for the first time in my life, I'll walk down an aisle not as someone's creation, but as myself. Mother has 3 more years in prison. I don't visit anymore, but I heard from Aunt Patricia that she's been assigned to work in the prison library. Apparently, she's reorganizing it with a complex system that requires perfection to navigate. Some prisons are made of concrete and steel. Others are made of our own inability to change. But change is possible. I'm living proof. To everyone reading this who recognizes their own story in mine, you are not crazy. You are not ungrateful. You are not wrong for wanting to be loved as you are rather than as someone else's projection of perfection. You choosing to be around safe people is the only real apology you can give to your little self. The path to freedom isn't perfect. You'll stumble, doubt yourself, sometimes even miss the certainty that came with someone else controlling your life. But on the other side of that imperfect journey is something Mother never understood and therefore could never give: unconditional self-acceptance. I want to leave you with something I learned in therapy, something that changed my life. You don't have to earn the right to exist. You don't have to justify your humanity through achievements. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You just have to be. And that's enough. You're enough. You always were. If you're currently trapped in a situation like mine, please know. Document everything. Find a therapist who understands narcissistic abuse. Connect with support groups, online ones like r/raisedbynarcissists saved my life. Trust your reality even when they try to make you doubt it. Plan your escape carefully and safely. Know that life beyond their control is possible. And remember, the opposite of perfection isn't failure, it's freedom. My name is Mo. I'm 23 years old. I'm a survivor of narcissistic abuse. I'm imperfect, flawed, human, and real. And for the first time in my life, I'm happy. Not perfect. Happy. And that's the most perfect revenge of all.